Yeah, the other thing we don't have notes is because we're constantly like Googling stuff while we do the podcast. Like, Mitch and I have done enough of these to where like we're very good at like looking at each other and be like, "Hey, I'm almost done Googling. Keep talking. Don't shut up. I'm working on something." What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Team Morale Podcast, where we do our three favorite things: talk a little bit of booze, a little bit of beer, and a whole lot of basketball. E is here with you today. The tall guy is actually out at work, so we are welcoming in a new member of the Team Morale family here, Edison LaCour, out of Orange County, California. Welcome, Edison.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. It is a joy to be back here with you talking basketball, like we always used to and still do. It's fun to be on. First time caller, long time listener, if you will. Um, and I'm excited to talk some hoops with you.
Yeah. So Edison and I went to high school together, and we've been friends for a long time. He is an avid basketball fan, and like Mitch and I, works in the television sports realm a little bit. Edison, why don't you give our viewers a little bit of a background on you a little bit?
Yeah. So I was gonna say I kind of got my start or figured out this is what I wanted to do back in high school. I think that was one of our only classes together, actually, was journalism, and which is probably why I like that class so much. But after that, I was just like, okay, this is what I want to do. So, started going to school for it. Thinking about going back to school for it, actually. So, going to get a master's degree and work through all that. But yes, like you said, avid basketball fan. I went to UCLA, so I love my Bruins. But on this podcast, I know we talk a little more about NBA. And I mean, as anybody should be in Southern California, I am a Lakers fan, and
Ew,
unapologetic
disgusting.
Lakers fan.
You're lucky
Um,
Mitch isn't on today. You're
I,
lucky
oh,
Mitch is not
I
on.
know. I know when we talk, we're gonna have a few things to talk shop about. The first one could be what I got to do to get his boy down to Southern California, but
Ooh,
we
boy.
can save that for a later. We can save that for a later date.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot has happened in the NBA since our last podcast a week ago. I feel like we say that every week, but yeah, in the NBA and especially during the playoffs, a lot does happen on a week to week basis. And on a once a week podcast, you have a lot to catch up on. So we are recording this Tuesday night, and the Suns and the Clippers just wrapped up a crazy game. We will break that
Unbelievable.
all down a little bit later. But the
Scott Foster masterclass, by the way.
yeah, we'll break that whole game down. We'll talk about Scott Foster, a lot of questionable referee decisions in that contest. But another thing that happened in today's NBA world, I guess a little bit, was the NBA lottery.
Yes, the NBA lottery took place today. And since the tall guy is not here, I feel compelled to
Oh no.
say, but before we do,
Oh boy. I
uh,
said this last time, and I am in the process. I'm in the hunt for a custom koozie like thing so I can buy some custom koozies. I'm gonna make a but before we do koozie, and we'll
that
put it
would
up
be
on like
awesome.
our Instagram or something. It's in the works. It's in the works.
That would be awesome. So yes,
But before we do,
before we do, Ethan, why don't you tell them what we got going on here today? What are we drinking?
so we are drinking Shock Top, and those of you on our YouTube, I'm holding the bottle, but Shock Top Belgian White. It's a beer, and it is a crispy one.
Yes, it is for the ASMR fans out there. Let's see. Go ahead and. Oh, I feel like that was a good one. I feel like that was a good one.
And that was on the first take. I can promise you,
First
we did
take.
not practice that, ladies.
No, that was live. First take. Mm.
That was impressive. But yes, Shock Top. We are drinking their Belgian White, and it is it's a Belgian white beer. It is a crispy beer, and I'm reading this off their website here. It is brewed with real orange, lemon, and lime peels for a smooth, citrusy finish that is always down to chill and be chilled, is what their website says. But it is a spiced Belgian-style wheat ale that is, like I said, a little bit on the citrusy side. And we'll get into the taste, that what we think about it a little bit ago. But this holds a little bit of a sentimental value, doesn't it, Edison?
Yeah, it does. I'd say this is probably, I think you introduced this to me. This was one of the first beers that I ever had in college. That wasn't like Natty Light or Natty Ice or anything like that. And I think it's really good, especially because it holds a sentimental value, and sentiment is a flavor profile. So, I mean, to me, it's one of my go-to choices for sure.
Yeah, for for reference, this was either late high school or early college, and basically this was our version
When
of
my mom listens to this, it was early college.
but but it was our version of, you know what? We're gonna get a nice IPA for the evening.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We're
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 we're we're,
spending
we're
top shelf dollar right now.
we are beer snobs this evening. We are not going with the Coors Lights or the Natty Lights or the
Miller Lite,
Keystone.
never heard of her.
No, no, we are classy gentlemen here.
Yeah.
We are going to go with the Shock Top because
Yeah,
you know
and
what?
to us, I guarantee you, to us, this was like we thought this was a step above Blue Moon too, and I guarantee you, they're probably on the same plane, like guaranteed.
Yeah.
But hey,
I can vividly remember slicing like an orange peel to like into the thing and being like, man, I'm going places.
this is high living.
I,
Like
I have
this
made
is
it.
high living. Oh yeah, for sure, for
Oh,
sure.
yes. But yes, Shock Top, shout out to you guys for joining us on today's podcast. We will break down what we think taste wise a little bit later on today, but let's jump into this lottery. Edison, for some of our viewers that don't necessarily follow the NBA super closely, break down what exactly the lottery is.
So the draft lottery is for all the teams that didn't end up making the playoffs, aka they're bad. Um, and to help them get better, you with the NBA has a draft lottery. So it goes to all the teams that didn't make the playoffs, and the teams that finish at the very end, at the very bottom of the NBA, they have the best odds to win this lottery. Like there's a big, I don't even know if this is like a physical thing, but in my head, what I always imagine is there's a big pot full of lottery balls,
That's
and one
literally
team
what it
has
is.
more
Yes.
than another. Like I thought it was, but I was like, okay, just in case it's not. One team has more than another, and this and that, and they just pick them out. I think it's what 12 in a row or something
14,
like that, or no,
14,
14.
14.
The first 14, and they pick them 14-1, and that's it. But to some of these franchises who have been struggling for a while, I mean, like my Lakers not too long ago, the draft lottery was everything.
Yeah,
Like
this
by the All-Star break, we knew, all right, season's chalked. Like there's nothing left to play for at this point. And this is the day. I remember the day that we got the second pick, and as a UCLA guy, I was like, "We're getting Lonzo Ball." That was one of the happiest days of my life at that time. Of course, obviously, it didn't work out, but still, to me, that was a dream. Do I wish we took Jason Tatum? Yes, but at the time, it was awesome.
Yeah, I and like you're referencing, this was probably one of the biggest days of the season slash NBA experience for a lot of fans. And it's weird that the NBA kind of just crams it in before a playoff game. I think that
It's so weird.
I've always
It's
thought
so
that's a
weird.
little bit weird. I think like if I'm the NBA, I want to play this up and make like its own thing, and like I would think you can get like a whole night of on ESPN for it
Oh
or
yeah,
something, but
you probably could if they
instead
really want to.
instead they cram it in before a playoff game. And yeah, like you said, it's unlike other sports where the worst team is just given the first pick. If you could be the worst team in the NBA and not be and you're not guaranteed to get the first pick in the draft.
No,
Now, the worse you are, the better odds you have. And as of a
correct.
couple years ago, they've broken it down into tiers, basically, where like the bottom three have the same odds, and then the next three have the same odds, and the next three after that have the same odds. And I think the bottom three, I think, is like a 30 something percent chance at it. So it very rarely breaks out of the bottom three. It's very rare that the fourth or fifth best team jumps all the way to one, but it's not unheard of. It's happened before.
Right. And that being said, I mean, it's not unusual for teams to either over or underperform, their given lottery odds. I mean, that's literally what a lottery is, right? It's just luck of the draw. And with that being said, there was definitely some of that in this year's lottery draw.
Yeah, so I'm pulling up. I'm gonna read off some of the order here. I'm not gonna go through the whole thing because it's a lot, but
Yeah.
where is it? Okay, so Detroit won the lottery. They got
Detroit basketball.
shout out ladies man Tom if you're listening.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wanted to have you on the podcast, but I'm figured you're hammered already. So
Fade for Cade.
yeah, he actually sent me a text because he might be coming and staying with me for a little while, and he literally sent me out. He's like, "Yeah, so during the draft, once we pick Cade, I'm gonna be pretty hammered." And I'm like, "You go, Tom, you go." So Detroit, who had the second best odds, jumped to 1. Houston, who had the best odds, fell to 2. Cleveland jumped all the way from 5 to 3. And then, in my opinion, the biggest winner of the night was Toronto, jumped all the way
By
from
far.
7 to 4. Orlando stayed put at 5. Oklahoma City stayed put at 6. Minnesota fell from, looks like 2. No, Minnesota stayed at 7. They were supposed to be 7, right? I don't know where Minnesota.
I
It gets
do
confusing.
believe Minnesota fell because, or maybe
Toronto
they didn't
jumped.
fall, but they lost their pick. That pick that is
Yes,
for
that was the
Minnesota goes to Golden State because of that Wiggins and D'Lo trade.
yes. So and again, as
It's top 4
as
protected, I believe.
as always in the NBA, when it comes to trades and stuff like that, we've talked about on the podcast before, it gets uber confusing. It's
Very.
super confusing. So, moral of the story, Minnesota fell to 7, but it's going to the Warriors. The Warriors will be picking 7th because of the D'Angelo Russell trade.
Correct.
Chicago fell to 8, but that pick is actually going to Orlando. So the Magic actually have picks 5 and 8.
They have 2 top 10 picks,
They have
which
2
for a
top 10.
franchise that just traded their star player, like their marquee player who fills the stat sheet and put butts in seats, like that's big.
Yeah.
That's a big turnaround for them.
And you can argue they traded their 2 best players in Gordon and Vucevic.
True.
So
True. I was referring more to Vucevic.
yeah,
I mean, I completely forgot about Gordon, but
yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, good young team. They've got some good young players that are going to be interesting to watch. I think this might be the first time a team has had 2 top 10 picks since the Clippers a few years ago. When
That
they had,
might be. I do think you're right on
since they
that.
took SGA and some guy who didn't pan out
Who
and
didn't pan out.
ended
Let's
up
just
sucking.
leave it at that. Yeah.
Sacramento is at 9, and rounding out the top 10, we have New Orleans coming in at 10, which was another team that fell. So
Right.
looking at this, I mean, the NBA draft is always crazy. In my opinion, this draft is really going to be made in the first probably 5 picks. There seems to be like a top 5, and then it drops off after that. And we'll definitely bring in ladies man Tom again to go through another draft preview, just because that's what that guy does.
I mean, you could tell. I remember listening to that
guy
pod.
knows his stuff.
He lives and breathes the draft. I mean, as a
And-
Detroit fan, I see why, but I mean,
yeah, but with Detroit having the number 1 overall pick, we'll definitely have to have him on a podcast. But if you're Detroit, you're over the moon.
absolutely, and rightfully so. I mean, they get the number 1 pick. They win the Cade Cunningham lottery, and I think Detroit. Normally, you look at teams that have the number 1 pick, or even as far as a top 5 pick, and sometimes they don't go with the best overall at 1, right? They go with maybe the best fit at
For their
also
team.
of a high caliber
Yeah.
at number 1. I think Detroit is in a position where they are just so bad. Everybody outside of like what Jeremy Grant and maybe Mason Plumlee, who was on the rise this past year, like they need help everywhere. So they have the liberty of going, okay, who's the best overall player? Yeah, let's just like come here. Like we don't have to overthink this. Like just welcome to the team.
Yeah, there's no one on that roster that screams to me like I'm a safe starter.
Right.
Everyone,
Well, I mean, Jeremy Grant.
I mean, yeah, but if I'm Detroit, I'm definitely looking for like he played really well this year, which means he's going to get top value on the trade market.
That's true.
Like I don't think there's anyone that's safe, and for me, that just screams. And we won't break down all these, but I mean, number 1, that screams Cade Cunningham to me. Out of Oklahoma State, he's the best player in this draft. I would be absolutely shocked. I think ladies man Tom would literally just melt if they did not end up picking Cade Cunningham at 1.
If they went somewhere else. I mean, the only one in my mind that I could see maybe going for that other one is Suggs from Gonzaga. I mean, that kid's the truth. Do I think he's number 1 the truth? I mean, Cade Cunningham's still there, right? But I think if there's anybody you can make an argument for, I would say maybe him. I'm not too high on Mobley. I mean,
Well, he's an
I
SC
get
guy
it.
for
He's
one.
a Trojan. I'm a Bruin, whatever. I saw a lot of them, even just, when SC was playing other teams. I don't see what a lot of people see in him being like a number 2 overall pick. Do I think he's like a top 10 pick for sure, but like top 5 seems a little high to me. I mean, you can always work with those big guys. You can put more, more on the body frame. I think he's got great footwork. He's a modern big man. He's got great footwork. He can shoot the ball. He has an elbow jumper. His three will definitely need work if they're going to want him to shoot. But he's got a nice mid-range game, some good footwork. But I don't know. I'm not entirely sold on Mobley, but so I would say if not Cade Cunningham, then Suggs, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that you make a very good point. Suggs, incredible athlete. Mobley, the best big in the draft this year.
I
There's no question
definitely think
there.
that's true.
And then you have the wild cards in that the guys that chose not to go to college
From the G
chose to
League,
go straight to the G League.
correct.
The two guys that are really high out of that area are Jonathan Kaminga and Jalen Green, who the average basketball fan doesn't know a lot about them. You probably know the names, you probably recognize the names just because of mock drafts and stuff, but you don't see a lot of tape because they didn't play college ball. They played in the G League, so they don't have a lot of eyeballs on them in terms of the average person.
And I feel like that's something that as the G League, because I believe this was just their first year of doing this like elite team, if you will.
Yeah,
I feel like that's something that they will need to improve on if they're going to continue to make this something viable for players coming out of high school. Is you're right, you don't see a whole lot of tape on these guys that go and play in the G League. I mean, quite frankly, you don't see a whole lot of tape of anything coming out of the G League.
you see the
Um,
random dunk or Sports Center top 10 here,
right.
but other than that, you're right. You don't see a lot.
You don't see a whole lot of tape. So if this is going to be a continued thing, like something that will have longevity and be a viable option for these players. And I mean, I'm all for these players, wanting to come out of high school, and if they want to get paid, they don't want to go to college. They just want to get paid and then go to the league. Sure, do what you got to do.
Power
Like,
to you. Power to you.
yeah, more power to you, right? But something they will need to improve on is getting more eyeballs on the product because I mean, just like you said, and I consider myself to be a little more knowledgeable than the average fan. I have no clue who those guys are. Like, just truthfully honest, no clue. Like when you were like, "Oh yeah, the two guys who have been talked about most," I'm like, I haven't heard a single person coming out of that G League team, and so I think that's something that they'll have to improve on. And because I mean, I just all of those guys are just completely unknown to me.
Yeah, and it's you're not alone, and I've read a couple of things here and there about, different players coming out just cuz, I love the draft and I'm curious about it.
Right.
And, I'm friends with ladies man Tom, and I get texts daily like, "Did you see what so and so did?" I'm like, "No, I'm not a nut."
Who?
But
Yeah.
but yes, the those two are definitely going to be something to watch going forward. And you do make good points. If the NBA is going to try to, it's almost like they're trying to rival NCAA, like college basketball with their own product of the G League. Will it ever get to, college basketball March Madness level? Hell no.
No,
But
not
I
a
do
chance.
not no, but I do think that they could poach some good players that to where like the product is worth watching.
I agree with that as well. I mean, they already did, poach a few guys from, the top tier of the draft class. I believe UCLA lost out on a 5-star recruit to that G League team this past year. None this year. I mean, I don't mean to sound like a homer. That's just like I don't look too much into other, top recruits. That's just, that's who I pay attention to, right? And but it's something that I think has all the right pieces. It has the right, intentions, and it's a good option to give people. Um, but it does need some retooling.
Yeah. Well, I don't know necessarily retooling. It just needs to grow. I think
Yeah,
you're
that's
going to
also
get an
true.
influx of talent. You just need to give it time.
I think that's a fair point. It does need to be given time. However, to your other point of will it ever rival the NCAA, I just don't think that's going to happen. I mean, you have these institutions that have years and like talking almost hundreds of years of history in their basketball programs. Like they are rooted into the hearts of some of these communities and fans. Like when you start something that's competing with something that's, 100 years old or close to it, I mean, Rome's not built in a day, but I mean, good Lord, it's going to take a lot for the G League team to have that kind of impact that, these major blue blood universities have.
Yeah, and I would agree. And backing you on that, like March Madness is one of the marquee just sporting events of the year. Not even just
Oh, without a
basketball, but
doubt.
just sporting, and just to try to take on that as an undertaking of itself. I don't think they're trying to, ram into the NCAA. I think they're just trying to take their piece of the pie. If
Right. And I don't even know if I don't even know if I'd say that they're trying to do that. Like I feel like part of them has to know that there's just no competing with that. Like even if they don't want to admit it, like deep down a little part of them has to know that you just can't compete with that. They can make their own thing, sure, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's just me, and like I just feel like you can't touch March Madness. Like
yeah,
that's one of the
no,
best things on the planet.
that is, in my opinion, a month long holiday. The fact that we have to wait
Yeah.
in March is a tragedy. Right?
Yeah,
Come
yeah,
on,
no, I feel that.
society. Come
Yeah,
on.
we're
That's
better than this,
ridiculous.
people. We're
Come
better than
on.
this.
All right, but
Um,
let's look at this lottery again. We got,
yes, little
and this
off
is,
track.
and no. This is something that Mitch and I do all the time. I every once in a while we're like, man, we spent 20 minutes on our podcast talking about something that we didn't even prepare for. We just started talking. But you know what? When you end up drinking and then
Hey,
talking into a microphone, stuff
natural
happens.
conversation
Stuff
is never
happens.
bad
It's why we
content.
love the Team Morale podcast, because it's
Exactly.
literally just drinking with the guys, talking hoops. Looking at this list, you have Detroit, Houston, Cleveland, Toronto, Orlando rounding out the top five. In your mind, and I see one here. There's a clear just winner of the night. Besides Detroit getting number one, there's a clear like, oh, this team really didn't come in with a lot and left with a lot more.
You might disagree with me on this because I think I know where you're going, or we
Yeah,
could have the same one. I'm going to say it's Houston.
Houston falling from 1 to 2 is the team that did the best.
I'm not, they
Interesting.
didn't fall from 1 to 2. Remember, the top
Yes,
three have the
yes,
same
you're right. You're
odds,
right. You're right. But they
right?
had the worst record in the NBA this year.
Worst record in the NBA. They kept their top tier pick, staying at 2, right? So they then get to decide, okay, let's look at our team. We have a Christian Wood, we have Christian Wood, but we can put we can put somebody else with Christian Wood. So I think that takes him out of Mobley because I don't see why you would take Mobley if you have Christian Wood. So that's when you're like, okay, Jalen Suggs, or you could take Mobley if you look to trade Christian Wood,
Jalen
right?
Green will be up there as well.
Jalen
Yeah.
Green will be up there. So I mean, there's things that they can do a lot with this pick. And the only reason I'm saying Houston is more from a fan's perspective, if you will, because if you look at this, right, this wasn't the Brooklyn pick, was it?
No, this is their pick.
Right, this was their pick, but they'll have this pick, they'll have the Brooklyn pick, and Brooklyn didn't even make a conference finals. So to
Yeah, that's a
them,
good point.
they lost their star. Their star went to another team, a super team, if you will. They didn't even make a conference final, let alone an NBA final. So you got to see them crash and burn.
Yeah.
And now you get their pick and you keep your top tier pick. As far as fan feelings go, I don't know if anybody aside from Detroit, I don't know if anybody is feeling as good as Houston tonight.
That's a good point. That's a good perspective that I didn't think of. I was referencing more of Toronto,
Okay.
who had started the night with the seventh best odds, jumped all the way up to 4. And again, as I said earlier, there's really 5 good, solid, great players in this draft with Cade Cunningham, Jalen Suggs, Mobley, Kuminga, and Jalen Green. And so those 5, you want to be in the top 5 to get one of those guys, because those guys are the cream of the crop. After that, the difference between picking 5th and 6th is huge.
Huge.
And so for them to be 7, jump to 4, get into that 5, adding a player like a Mobley to go with,
I could see
Van
that being a
Vliet,
decent fit.
Siakam,
Yeah.
that core is incredible. They have what's the guy's name? OG Anunoby, a
Mhm.
great wing. You can add a great big man to that pairing. You have Chris Boucher, who's already there, but you have another, a semi-stretch 5 who's long, lanky, has great footwork, like you said. That's a great pairing. You can add, your Kyle Lowry replacement in Suggs as a point guard.
Right.
You can do a lot with this pick, and
Mhm.
you're not in the position where you're having to make decisions. One of those guys is going to fall to you, and you have enough holes on your roster to where you don't need to necessarily
You
be.
can plug
You can
whatever the
plug
best available
wherever you
is.
want. And so
Yeah.
in my mind, Toronto has none of the pressure of being like, oh my God, this guy could bust, because you're getting, one of them's going to fall to you, and it's going to be there. Like, everyone's going to be
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, you got to take that guy.
Right.
So I think Toronto, if you're a Raptors fan, you are very excited for draft night.
I would agree with that, absolutely. And I know I was talking some shit on him earlier, but I Mobley would be a pretty decent pick here for the Raptors and their fit and their scheme. And because the one thing I haven't talked about Mobley is that he is a great defender. Like, he's a great defender, and if you give him to Nick Nurse is going to put him in right positions,
Scary.
right? Like,
Scary.
Nick Nurse is going to know what to do with him, right? So I think that would be a pretty good get for Toronto if he's still there. Somebody could take him at 2 or at 3. I mean, I think the foregone conclusion is that Cunningham's going at 1. But if he falls to Toronto at 4, who, like you said, wasn't supposed to be in this position, I think they got to feel pretty happy with what they can get.
Yeah, and to him falling, they have a decent chance because, like you said, Houston has Christian Wood, a solid
Right.
big man. Cleveland, who's picking 3rd, has Jared Allen, solid
Right.
big man. So the chances of him falling to Toronto are decently high, as long as Detroit doesn't pick him at 1, which, again,
I think that would shock everybody.
That would shock everybody.
Yeah.
I think one last thing that I think we need to talk about, at least with the lottery, is there are 2 different teams with 2 different picks within the lottery. With
Mhm.
Orlando picking at 5th and at 8, and then the Golden State Warriors, who, this is scary, just they're going to be getting Clay back. They have all this firepower. They have Steph Curry playing at a crazy level, and then they have the 7th and the 14th pick in this draft. Which, if I'm the Warriors fan, I am screaming, clawing, scratching, do whatever I can to see if I can package these 2 picks and something else to get into the top 5.
I would think you're right. Even if they don't, I mean, let's just talk about getting Clay back. First of all, is going to be huge for them. Give them somebody else besides Steph Curry that can score the ball. And just, if they do end up keeping their picks, do they make an immediate impact? I mean, like we said, at 7 and 14, the likelihood of that is small. So I could see,
I would say
trying to
7,
package
maybe.
something.
7, I could think making it 7. And
7 maybe. 14, I think we can rule that out.
probably. I mean, you have guys that can step up and play from a later pick like that. But yes, I would agree. Generally, those guys aren't going to do that. But I mean, you had guys like Desmond Bane, who had a huge impact for the Memphis Grizzlies this year, who was the 30th pick, and Sadiq Bey, who was a pick of the Detroit Pistons, who played really, really well for them, who went 18th.
Right.
So
Now
it's possible.
correct me if I'm wrong, and I think I'm wrong on the second one, so that's why I'm saying correct me if I'm wrong. Is that 2 TCU plugs you just managed to work in there?
No. Desmond Bane was a TCU grad.
Okay.
Sadiq Bey went to Villanova.
That's right.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
both great shooters. But yes,
Yes.
if we had 2 guys get drafted in the first round, hold on, we would be doing a whole podcast about TCU basketball. But hold on, we've had 1 guy drafted in the first round ever, just ever. So that's fun.
All right. I just wanted to double check. I knew the first one. I knew Bane.
I saw you put the 2 up, and I knew exactly what you were doing. Nope, I didn't do it. But my point being here is, you could get 2 bench players, and the biggest weakness the Warriors had this year was their bench. Was not even horrendous. Horrendous is a compliment.
Yeah.
Their bench was awful. Like, just G League level talent. So
yeah.
if you can, if they could find a way to hit on both these picks to where like you can just, ask a guy to give you 15 a night off the bench and not be terrible, NBA better be watching out.
I mean, especially as somebody who's in their division, right? I mean, it was kind of fun, for a while, like being like, oh, haha, like we're good again, the Warriors suck again, all's right with the world, whatever. Seeing now that they got two lottery picks, and we just said their bench was the worst part about them all season. Anytime Steph Curry took a step towards the bench, their rating just plummeted to the earth's surface. And just now that they could potentially beef up that bench with two lottery pick players, with 7 probably giving more impact than 14. But like you said, if they can hit on both of them, they're getting a healthy Klay Thompson. And Draymond's found this newfound role. I mean, he's always kind of had the triple single role, but like now he's even more of a facilitator than we've seen in the past. They're going to be, someone that's tough to match up with. And I think they can get right back into the thick of things. I mean, they already were. Steph carried, literally backpacked them to the 8th seed this year. They went as far as him. So now you're saying that he doesn't have to do as much, and which means he gets more rest. He won't be as extended by the end of the season. He'll be fresher for the playoffs. You'll get Steph and Klay back, plus potentially these 2 picks, or like you said, package them for a top 5 pick. I might, once again be like, all right, Warriors might compete again. So we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be crazy. And then the other team that's worth mentioning here, Orlando, having 2 picks, picking 5th and then picking 8th. Again, the 8th pick actually being the Chicago Bulls pick, but via the Vucevic trade going to Orlando. Again, 5th and 8th, so they are in that valuable top 5. They'll get that last of the good there, and then
which is a good get for them, especially considering now they have 2 top 10 picks after giving away their 2 best players in this season. Nobody's going to say they're going to replace them from day one, but just to get those building blocks back after they lost them is a huge get for Orlando.
Yeah, and this would be my team that I would think would be trying to move up. And here's why. Because let's say you're Cleveland at 3, right? And the first 2 picks, you still have a guy you like. And you get a call from Orlando saying like, "Hey, we'll give you 5, so you still get, that
one of those marquee guys,
one of those marquee guys, and we'll give you 8." Now you get to add another player while Orlando can move up and get their guy, the guy that they want at, let's say, 3 or 2, while the other team can still land one of those marquee guys, those, like you said, those top guys, while adding another, player to their rotation, another top 10 pick to their rotation. I can see Orlando, they're in a prime spot to make a move if they want to.
And think about if 5 and 8 hit, right? Like obviously there's a pretty good chance that 5 hits, but in that 7-8 range is those like best of the rest kind of positions, right? 6, 7, 8.
Now you're picking for fit more than just raw skill, but yes, you can still find a lot of really good players in that range,
and you're getting a top 10 player out of it. If that package, obviously this is all hypothetical, but if that package were to come to fruition and Cleveland says yes, I mean Orlando could come out of this looking like a genius.
Yeah, they could. This could be a franchise changing draft for Orlando if they can do this right.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, that wraps up draft talk. We went way more in depth than I thought we were, but I'm very excited that we did, because that was actually some good analysis for you guys, for you basketball junkies out there that are, more so than the average person. But let's revisit this shock top. Let's, we've had a billion of these in our lifetimes.
Yes, so, less. And let's see.
Let's see what we got to talk about here. Oh, we're going back to ASMR.
Can I go 2 for 2? Oh, you bet I can. Oh, you bet I can.
That one was better than the first one. That one was solid. Okay, but take a sip, let marinate a little bit, and let me know what you think on it.
I mean, it was interesting when you were reading the flavor profiles with I knew it was citrus, and obviously I knew it was orange, because if you look at their logo, it is quite literally an orange peel with a mohawk, wearing some sunglasses.
which is a
Um,
vibe.
which is a vibe, by the way. But the one that was interesting to me was that lime.
Yeah.
I would say I never really quite got it at first, but until now that it's been in my mind, I've had some time to think about it and like really kind of look for it. Like I was like, okay, it's not just orange, like
Which is
but it's
weird.
very good.
Yeah, which is weird because for me, I had that same thing happen, but with the lemon.
Okay,
I was like, I never really got lemon, and I was like, oh no, there's some lemon in here.
there it is. Yeah.
And I chalk it up to this podcast at developing my taste buds. I'm a lot better at like, sniff or not sniffing, but tasting things and being like, okay, like
Searching for things.
I
Yeah.
understand exactly what I'm tasting here. But yes, I'd get a lot of an orange aftertaste, but when I first
Mhm.
sip it, I'm hit with a lot of lemon and a lot of lime, a little bit of a sour, not necessarily sour, but you get that like vibrant, like
Heart,
in
I
your
would
face.
say, more
Yeah,
so than
tart.
sour.
Tart's a
Yeah.
very good word for it. So yeah, you get that, and then you get hit with a little bit of with orange at the end, but then you have this like almost like frothy, like vanilla-y back end to it, which is very like
Okay.
it adds to the refreshness of it.
Absolutely. I would say
Refreshingness.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
it's
word,
a
right?
solid beer.
Maybe. I don't know.
Solid
Yeah.
beer.
All around solid beer. I would say it's also pretty cheap too. Like, I mean, I know we said when we were back in college, it was like, oh, we're high living today. Like once, we got older and started buying more beer, it's like, wow, this is actually pretty affordable compared to
Yeah,
some of your craft beers out there. So,
it's a very good
um,
bang for your buck beer. It it puts you at the pool during a hot summer day, just kind of hanging out. It's like it's a perfect like it's hot out. You've got these chilled on ice, and it's not gonna be like a lot of beers, that are like have a lot of flavor, like kind of heavy. And you're like,
mm,
I don't know if I could drink this, more than one of these, or more, or one if it's like hot outside, or anything like that. This is a good, refreshing, but also flavorful and tasty beer.
absolutely. And I was gonna say, just kind of backtracking on a point that you gave earlier, with the lemon kind of hitting you at the front. It's not. It reminds me. It doesn't hit as hard, obviously, as another one of our favorites from back in the day, the summer shandies, from
Oh, the
Leinenkugel,
Leinenkugel. We need
the
to do a
Leinenkugels.
Leinenkugel podcast.
Oh,
Oh
I
my
would
god.
be
Those would bring back some memories. Man,
the.
I go.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
For me the best thing about those one like the biggest memories I can pull out with the Leinenkugels was going to visit you at TCU, and we decided for dinner we were going to get canes, and I was about to get a lemonade, and then you were like, yo, we got summer shandies in the fridge, and I was like, I don't need a drink because like I'm basically having lemonade in beer form, like that. And with those summer shandies, so I would say the more I think about it, the more I realize we really kind of are citrus beer fans. At
which
least I am, and I feel
yeah.
like you introduced those to me, so I feel like I can make the assumption that you are too.
Yeah, these the citrus-based beers are always really good. I love shandies. I love stuff like that. But I'm guarantee you there are listeners out there like these guys are a bunch of fucking bitches. What the fuck are those guys drinking?
I still like a good stout. That'll put some hair on your chest. But yeah, no, I do enjoy me some citrus beers.
Keep in mind this is a whiskey podcast. We drink a lot of whiskey on here.
Hey, I'm
It
I'm all about the whiskey too. I'm all about the whiskey too. Next time we come on, we'll do that.
yeah,
Maybe when I come out to visit you, we can do
yeah,
something like that.
absolutely, absolutely. But yes, citrus beers, they're solid. Don't judge. We
Don't
don't need
judge.
we don't need that.
There shouldn't be any judgment. So if
No
you are
judgment.
judging, get
No
off your
judgment
high
from us.
horse.
Yeah. Have a
Oh,
citrus beer and then judge us.
exactly.
Have a citrus beer or 12 and then judge us. Okay. All right. Now that I'm off my soapbox, let's jump back into some basketball here. We have two crazy good series to talk about, break down. We're gonna have to rifle through them a little bit. We talked a little bit more about the
That's
lottery
okay.
than we
That's
planned,
okay.
but you know what? We always budget and then we always go over. So we're just gonna go over yet again today. Uh, so yes, we have two series. I would say let's start with the East.
Let's
Let's
start
start
because
there, and
that
then
one hasn't started
that one
yet. So
hasn't
it's gonna
started
be a
yet.
true preview.
I would think the Bucks would have made it to the conference final.
Yes, I would agree with
Atlanta,
that.
wild card.
Yeah, I
Absolute
mean,
wild card.
I would agree. To some extent, I would say that not that Milwaukee's a wild card. I just think the fact that Milwaukee, with how the standings played out and how the brackets were drawn up, Milwaukee having to face Brooklyn before the conference finals, you could consider them a little bit of a wild card as well. Not nearly to the extent as Atlanta. But I mean, just about everybody picked Brooklyn to come out of the East. Um, Obviously, if anybody was going to give Brooklyn a run, it was gonna be the Bucks. I mean, I just don't see anybody else beating either one of those teams, which is why, if you ask me, I'm taking the Bucks in this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I want to take the Bucks, I do, but I wanted to take Philly, and I had New York.
I
So
did have Atlanta over New York, but I did have Philly over Atlanta. So I do see where you're coming
yeah,
from. It's
and
hard to pick against Ice Trey right now. It
yeah, dude,
is.
he is incredible. And I will say, like, me and the tall guy in an earlier pod, actually it was one of our first podcasts, got in a like rather heated debate over Atlanta and whether or
Mhm.
not they would be a top 4 seed or not. And it was like he didn't think they were making the playoffs, and I was like, nah, they're not only making the playoffs, they're a top 4 seed. And it was at that point it was a hot take, but they ended up doing it. Or no, they were a 5 seed.
They're five, but still,
But
I mean, hey,
still, but close.
they're in the conference finals. I
But hey,
mean, that's worth something.
I mean, this team is playing the most Cinderella like basketball right now. They are making the plays they need to make. They're getting guys to step up. I mean, Kevin Herter, the hero of game 7.
You mean
I mean,
Kayvon?
but yeah,
K-
just the hero of game 7. I mean, when your star goes 5 for 23 from the field and you get a
yeah,
guy that can, is normally a role player to step up, take advantage of a mismatch and go off for, I think he had over 25 points in a crucial game.
is huge.
They don't win that game without him. They're not getting out of that series without him. And then we're talking about a whole different thing. But yeah, the Hawks playing great basketball, and they're getting it from not only their superstar, but their role players as well.
Absolutely. And I think while we're giving out roses, we have to give some to Nate McMillan. I mean, if you look
Incredible coach.
at the Hawks prior to Nate McMillan's hiring, they were just abysmal in close games. I mean, and some of those games, if you remember, I believe they went on some sort of like 6, 7 game losing streak, like in the middle of the season before Nate McMillan took over. And in, I want to say more than half of those games, they went into the fourth quarter with a double-digit lead and they found ways to lose those games. Nate McMillan comes in, he rights the ship. Whatever it was that he did, like either the players just lost confidence in the last coach, or something different that he instilled in his players. I don't know what it is, but you have to give him some sort of credit for turning around. And now Atlanta in close games, they're one of the best teams, at least in these playoffs, in getting those finishing kicks and like in finishing games. They're one of the best teams to close out a game.
Yeah, when Nate McMillan took over, they were not only not in the playoff race, they were like in the borderline. All right, are we looking for, tonight's lottery already? And then he
Yeah,
took over, and now they're in the conference finals. And I mean, with a team that is, I would say, eclectic roster wise, they've just got a lot of random weird pieces that, and the fits are not necessarily on paper the best, but it is
mm,
working. And
it is.
the one thing they do have for them roster wise is they have this really good mesh of young players and old vets. You've got young players like Trey Young, DeAndre Hunter. You can argue Clint Capella is still young, but then you have these old guys like Gallinari, Lou Will, guys like that who like,
Lemon
I-
Pepper Lou
yeah,
has been playing incredible these playoffs.
in limited minutes, but he's definitely played really well. Gallinari had the game-winning steal in Game 7. Just played incredibly well. Hit some big threes along the way as well. And there was on the broadcast they had this shot of the it was like with 30 seconds left, the Hawks needed to stop, right? and the coaches are over there on the clipboard drawing up a play while all the players are getting rested before the coaches come in, and Gallo is there like cheering the team on. He's not in the game right now. He's cheering the team on. He's going nuts. He makes the great steal later. And you can read his lips and he goes, "We believe." Like, and he just kept saying, "We believe, we believe."
Right.
I believe in you guys. Like, you guys got this. And a guy like Gallinari, who's been in the league for so long, played for so many teams, and just had such an up and down career, to like, if I'm a young guy, like, that guy's a vet. That guy's been there. That guy's done that.
Right.
If he believes in me, well, shit, I'll believe in me. Like,
Yeah,
let's go,
right.
right?
Right. I mean,
Like,
you can't undervalue that kind of leadership and that kind of like veteran presence. Solomon Hill. I mean, of course, Solomon Hill isn't playing, but he's another one of those guys he's
he was
always up.
starting at the beginning of the series. Like, he's still adding valuable minutes, especially on the defensive end for this team. He's a
Absolutely.
piece for sure.
And he's almost an extension of that coaching staff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you just can't undervalue that.
Yeah, absolutely. Turning the page here, the Bucks. I mean, if there's pressure right now, it's on the Bucks to win the whole thing.
Has to be.
They're the healthiest team left. They're the team that hasn't been dealt a big hand. I mean, the Hawks are, in everyone's mind, just like lucky to be there.
Oh, the Hawks are playing with house money.
Yeah.
And all the pressure is on the Bucks.
And the Bucks are the healthiest team there. If they can't beat this Bucks team, like, I would think Budenholzer is on the hot seat. I would think
he should be on the hot seat already. Some of those like ending sequences coming out of timeouts in that game 7 were horrendous. Like, I almost feel like, and this will be a tie-in to the Hawks. At this point, I feel like this Bucks team might be winning in spite of Budenholzer, kind of like that 08 Celtics team did with Doc Rivers, which, by the way, that Doc Rivers pack is going sky high right now because, oh my goodness. I mean, there's nobody that loves to blow a lead like Doc Rivers. Nobody. So if you look at it that way, I mean, in my opinion, he already should be on the hot seat for some of the decisions that he has made in late games.
You're talking Budenholzer.
Budenholzer. Yep. There, for some of these decisions that he's made in late games, I feel like it has to be his call. The reason why Giannis isn't on the opposing team's number one option, especially when that number one option is a guy by the name of Kevin Durant, who's a little bit of a unicorn, kind of like your Greek freak is a little bit of a unicorn. Like, that's, you need him on that guy. And yes, it should be on Giannis, a multi-winner of the Defensive Player of the Year, to override his coach and be like, nah, give me him. But we're not seeing that.
But also, as a coach, you have, a DPOY guy. Use him. But instead, and that is just mind-boggling. But they ended up winning, through no like goodness of their own. The Nets got hurt. Let's say it like it is. If James Harden was able to run, they win the series.
I agree.
James Harden soldiered on, which is a whole nother thing. We don't have time to get into the Nets, but James Harden soldiered on and just, fought through. But the Bucks ended up winning against a hobbled Nets team. I think the Bucks are very lucky to be here, and they need to win this series, because if not, that Drew Holiday trade looks bad. That Chris Middleton contract looks bad. That Giannis sitting there looking like, man, I took an extension. I'm gonna need to fire the head coach. I mean, I need some better role play. Like, there's a lot of issues in Milwaukee that they need to sort out, and the only way they can sort it out is by winning.
And I do agree with that. All of those points, very well made. I agree. The reason why I think Milwaukee gets through is because if Milwaukee can get through, albeit a hobbled Nets team, like we've said, but with a fully healthy Kevin Durant, without Giannis guarding Kevin Durant. I mean, who's the Hawks' best player? Obviously, it's Trae Young, right? You're not going to have Giannis guard Trae Young. You're going to have Drew Holiday.
You do have
guard Trae Young.
You do have one of the best guard defenders in the NBA,
which is why I think the
perfect
Bucks
guy to
the series.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Which I agree. And to flip that, the thing that hurts the Hawks is they don't have anyone to even kind of throw at Giannis.
Not even close.
Your best option is probably either Gallinari or John Collins.
And he eats Gallinari for lunch. I mean, John Collins will put up a better fight, but Gallo just gets destroyed, if you ask me.
Yeah, Gallo's out there running with that old man Dirk look a little bit, with more of a waddle than an actual
Yeah.
run. But hey,
Yeah.
you know what? More power to you, Gallo. I love that you're still doing your thing. But yes,
Yeah, but I'll
I
take the
I have
Bucks in 6 in this one.
I have the Bucks in 5. But it just I don't like picking against the Hawks. It seems like they're the destiny team. It's their Cinderella season. But
Hey man, clock
hey,
strikes
yeah,
midnight eventually. Just
yeah,
ask UCLA men's basketball.
the pumpkin will come back at some point. So
Yeah.
so yeah,
Clock strikes midnight, and that's Ice Tray. Your time's coming. So,
but I think we need to leave a little bit of time here to talk about this other series.
oh my God, and what just happened,
This
especially.
game, if you guys did not watch this game, again, we are
First of all, you
recording this.
missed out.
Yeah, again, we are recording this Tuesday night right after the Suns and the Clippers wrapped up
And Scott Foster.
an incredible game. Scott Foster, the referee, definitely made his presence felt as he does in every game. The worst
Listen, I mean, I am not. I share that sentiment in the worst referee, but I have always kind of looked into like, oh, Scott Foster, da da da, like he got the call from Adam Silver. He knows what he has to do, kind of a thing. Like I've never truly bought into that. Like, how much effect can a referee have on a game? If you've ever thought that, like me, you're thinking differently after this game because some of the calls in this game were just flat out awful.
yeah,
And
it was ridiculous. I mean, again, and this could be a whole nother pod that we can get to later. I think the referees in basketball are the worst referees in professional sports. And I think Scott Foster is the worst referee in basketball.
Scott
His
Foster
whole
is the
crew,
worst referee in
his whole
basketball.
crew needs help because
Oh
they are
man.
the blindly the end. Okay, so the Suns won in incredible fashion. Let's wrap this up real quick.
Yes.
Suns won an incredible fashion to go up 2
Now lead 2-0.
to go up 2-0. DeAndre Ayton had an alley-oop dunk with zero point 0.8 seconds left on the clock
Should have been point 2.
to win the game, which was incredible. Back and forth, Booker and Paul George hitting big shots down the stretch. Booker breaking his nose earlier in a collision with none other than Pat Beverly, which is
I
not
mean,
a
who
surprise by
else?
anybody. But
Who
yeah,
else?
Scott Foster, the referee, had a huge impact on this game. We don't need to go
Especially down the stretch, man.
yes.
Like especially down the stretch.
Yes. And we don't need to go super into it, but yes, we can
No.
talk about it a little bit. I mean, there's not a reason, there's no coincidence, I guess is a better way to say it, that's Chris Paul, teams that Chris Paul has played for in games refereed by Scott Foster, this was their first win in the last 12 games. They were originally 0-11. Chris Paul, teams that had Chris Paul on him when refereed by this referee were 0-11.
And Chris Paul wasn't even playing tonight. Like he wasn't.
So wait till Chris Paul
playing.
plays. They're screwed.
Oh my goodness.
They're screwed. When
Yeah,
Chris Paul
if they
plays,
draw that referee again, absolutely.
they're screwed. They're screwed. And Kane Fitzgerald, the other referee, Jason Ford, if you're listening, he was texting me all sorts of angry Kane Fitzgerald slander. One of the other referees, I call him Five Head because his hairline is disgusting. Yeah, he was horrible tonight. The referees, tip my hat because you're the shit stains on Piss Island or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what the saying is, but they were terrible.
I mean, if we're only going to talk about one, and I don't think we should talk about more than one, but if we are going to talk about one, it has to be that Pat Bev steal on Devin Booker with like, I want to say 20 something seconds to go, or more like 9. But anyway, Patrick Beverly pokes the ball free off of Devin Booker, and the ball goes out of bounds. Now, Pat Bev, who in his opinion the ball has never gone out off of him once in his entire career, never fouled anybody, nothing. He pokes it off of, Booker's hand as he's dribbling, and it was originally called Suns ball because Pat Bev poked it out. Now it goes to replay because everything in the last 30 seconds of this game, it seemed like went to replay. And they went and they looked and it was like, oh, Pat Bev poked it out, but it like came off Booker's hand and out of bounds. So we got to give it to the Clippers. And I'm sitting there and I was watching this game with my mom and I was like, if Scott Foster finds a way to call this Clippers ball, this is just a masterclass. You can't say anything else. Like the letter of the law is the action that forces the ball out. It should go the other way. I mean, it's not like Booker lost possession of the ball and Patrick Beverly tapped the ball that then went off Booker's hand. Like if that was the case, yeah, that's clearly Clipper ball. But it was in Booker's hand as he started the downward motion of his dribble, and Pat Bev poked it out. That should have been Suns ball all day long. And sure enough, Scott Foster comes back to the mic and Clippers ball.
Well, the other thing was at the end of the game after DeAndre Ayton's dunk, it took them like 15 minutes to figure out how many players should be on the court.
Oh man, that was
Like
horrendous.
there is, and I don't necessarily, I'm not going to pretend to know why, but they were reviewing something for a while, trying to
because they
figure
couldn't
out.
have substitutions. The Clippers were trying to put different players on the floor after the review, but they
But
needed to put
regardless,
the 5 guys back on the floor.
it extended the game by 10 minutes because the referees were all sitting there with their
Completely
thumbs in
unnecessarily.
their mouth trying to
Yeah.
figure out what was going on. But let's get into the X's and O's of this game a little bit. Referees aside, they were horrible. The better team won tonight, and that's all.
I agree.
The team that played better tonight won, and that's all that matters. No thanks to the referees, but the better team won tonight. Man, the Suns without Chris Paul, the Clippers without Kawhi, the two probably most important players on their respective teams not playing in this series, and the Suns are taking it to them.
They are, and I mean it's guys like Devin Booker, obviously, who Stephen A. called this morning, I believe, the second coming of Kobe. Do I agree with that entirely? I mean, you can't say anybody's the second coming of anybody. I mean, they said Kobe's the second coming of Michael. He's his own guy. Booker will be his own guy, but you can tell he learned a lot of his game from number 24 or number 8, whoever you want to talk about.
I was talking with a couple of other people earlier, and I was saying that his offensive game is the closest thing we have to late career Kobe of anyone in the NBA. His mid-range
100%.
his pull-up game, it looks eerily similar. He's got the same little turnaround. Like
it's such a joy to watch as a Lakers fan. Like I know they knocked us out, and I wanted to be mad at them so bad, and I was, especially at Campaign, that rat-looking fuck Campaign. But Devin Booker, oh my god! I mean, the man is just—he's lights out. I mean, it's hard to beat a guy like Devin Booker, and when he was like, yeah, Kobe was in the building tonight, I was like, yeah, he was. And he wasn't necessarily rooting for us. Like you could tell, Spirit of Kobe was not with the Lakers. He was with Devin Booker, which is why I mean, I love watching Devin Booker. Always have, always will. And he is stepping up in this moment when he needs to without Chris Paul. And it was always going to be who's going to step up more, Paul George without Kawhi or Devin Booker without CP3. And to both of their credits, they both are playing fantastic. I mean, there has never been a bigger ball don't lie moment than Paul George missing those 2 free throws after that out of bounds call got reversed. But aside from that, whoever Pandemic P was, he's not here anymore. And it pains me to say that, but Paul George is balling.
Yeah,
and it's going to be up to the rest of that Clippers team to pick their game up as well without Kawhi. And they just aren't doing that in this moment.
Yeah. I mean, he played really well, 26 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 10 of 23 shooting, 1 from 8 from 3 from Paul George, which was a bit of a struggle. Reggie Jackson chipped in 19. But other than that, I mean, you had Zubats with 12 and then Luke Kennard had 10, but you're going to need Beverly to put up more than 6. You're not going to need Marcus. I mean, the biggest thing to me, Marcus Morris is going to need to be a 20-point per game scorer for them to win this series without Kawhi.
If Kawhi's not in, and I see
need Marcus Morris to shoot better than 3 for 11 and have more than 7 points. He needs to be in the 20s for them to have a chance.
If as long as Kawhi is out, he absolutely needs to be in the 20s. And if that's not going to happen, the Clippers, to quote the I don't even know his name, but he's just the Suns in 4 guy. If that's not going to happen, Suns in 4. I've seen.
That being said, the Clippers have been down 2-0 twice already and have come back. I've seen
and have come back. Yeah.
So, I mean, can they make adjustments? Yes, absolutely. Can they do that without Kawhi? I don't think so.
It's going to be tough. I mean, did they play that game 7 without Kawhi?
They did. They did.
Okay.
Played game 6 and game 7 without Kawhi.
Okay, so I mean, they have proven they can do it before. I knew it was game 6. I couldn't remember if it was game 7, but in that moment, your backs are against the wall, and every time their backs have been against the wall, they have responded. So I'm really looking forward to this game on Thursday for game 3, because you're going to see if, the Clippers, they're down 2-0. They've been in this position before. They absolutely can come back, and they've proven they can do it without Kawhi. Obviously, it's going to be a lot harder. But if you can start getting that production, I mean, Reggie Jackson has been balling. Somebody is going to give Reggie Jackson and Cam Payne way more money than they're actually worth at the end of this playoffs. Well, maybe not Reggie Jackson, because I think he's under contract, but I know Cam Payne will be a free agent in the summer, and he's about to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Somebody is going to overpay for him big time.
And I would agree he's going to be overpaid. But I mean, hats off to a guy who was in the G League last year.
Yeah. And in China before that.
Yeah, he was out of the NBA for several. I mean, people knew him as the guy. You remember Russell Westbrook used to do the dances. He was the dance. He was the dance guy. But now he was out of the NBA for several years, came back. I mean, he led the Suns in scoring tonight. He had 29 points, 12 from 24 from the field.
And I mean, just to clarify my earlier statement, I only referred to him as that because he killed my Lakers. Like, he has been balling.
Yeah.
And nobody saw it coming.
No.
Nobody.
And that's why the Suns are so dangerous to me, is the others have stepped up huge. I mean, again, Cam Payne, 29 points. DeAndre Ayton is just having a coming out party.
The NBA knows who DeAndre Ayton is now.
24 and 14, 12 from 16 from the field from DeAndre Ayton. Just incredible stat line. I mean, just played super well. The game-winning dunk, just played incredibly well. I mean, you have Cam Johnson and Saric with chipping in 11 off the bench each. So that's like 22 points coming off your bench from, your two big bench guys.
Yeah.
I mean, just playing very good basketball, and then led by, right now, Devin Booker. Once they get Chris Paul back and you slide Cam Payne back down to that bench, that helps your bench.
And you got Cam Payne coming off the bench now, which makes that bench unit even better. It's hard to see the Clippers coming out of this series.
Without Kawhi. If Kawhi can come back if
Kawhi can come back, it's completely different. But I know CP3 is likely for game 3. I believe Kawhi is still doubtful, at least when we're recording this right now.
Yeah, as of Tuesday night, Kawhi is still doubtful. They've been really mum about his injury. We're not really sure what's going on, but yes, if Kawhi doesn't come back, I think I have the Suns in 5.
Yeah, I would say that too. I mean, Suns in 4 for memes, but I'll give the Clippers a game.
Yeah, but that wraps up tonight's podcast, guys. I mean, welcome Edison, another member of the Team Morale podcast. He will be on many more podcasts to come for sure. Very knowledgeable guy, as obviously said. I mean, he had some great points tonight. Shock Top joining us tonight for another, sentimental yet fun podcast. We broke down the lottery, and then we broke down the 2 conference finals. We'll be back with you guys next week. I think we'll either be wrapping up the conference finals or starting the NBA finals. We'll see where we're at depending on how everything goes. But yeah, man, cheers. And I hope you had a good time on the podcast tonight.
Yeah, man, I had a great time. Thank you for having me. To all our listeners, I know this is probably a longer episode than normal, because if there's anybody who can get on a tangent more than Ethan, it's me. So we'll hopefully maybe Mitch can reel us in if I'm ever back on. But I had a great time. And thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for those of you who made it this far, go get yourself a Shock Top. All right, cheers, man.
All right, man. Take it easy. Thanks.
Clink.